everybody, welcome. We're glad to have you here tonight. We want to let you know that we're going to have Mario speak tonight as a jump start to our evening. You know, we've been talking about sustainable business and how businesses are thinking hard these days about what they can do to run lean and green, what they can do to be more efficient in their operations, and how they can take advantage of the opportunities that the green markets and are providing to them. And so Benicia has a number of initiatives that are perking along, and Mario is going to give us some insights into his projects and how and how it might pertain. Okay.
Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Mario Giuliani. I'm the City of Benicia's Economic Development Manager. And so Constance extended the invitation for me to review with you one of the things that we're most proud of in Benicia, and that's our Business Resource Incentive Program. And it is an economic development tool that we have, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the details. But before I go into that, I really want to stress to this group that when you're here and you're learning about finding initiatives or creating initiatives to be lean, green, and mean, this incentive program was created really out of an idea and out of a charge from members of our Sustainability Commission, which I'm sure you probably maybe learned about last meeting. And Constance and Kathy Carriage, the chair and vice chair at the time, came to our Economic Development Board meeting, and they said, you know, we think there are some real opportunities to pair what we're doing with sustainability and what you're doing with economic development, and we can create a program that is going to fulfill both of our goals. And to that end, we were in the process of revising our economic development strategy. And so we created within that strategy a program that would provide funding to businesses out in our industrial park to provide them capital in order to do energy saving initiatives, water saving initiatives, waste saving initiatives. And it was really a marriage between economic development and sustainability. And I mention that, and I begin with that because as you're here in the classroom and you're thinking about, well, you know, how do we do these things? Is this just an academic exercise? My lesson to you is no, it is not. What you conceive of in these places or in other places can actually happen and can get out into the real world, and you can have businesses, petrochemical businesses, actually employ some of these things. So let me talk to you about what this program is. And so I'm going to hand out a brochure, and you can look it over at your leisure. And I'll just here. Okay. So the Business Resource Incentive Program really has two components. The City of Benicia will pay for a qualified company, and we have two that we're using. We're using Carbon Lighthouse and TEAA to go out to our companies in the industrial park and perform an audit and assessment on their operations. And they're going to look at everything from the lighting structures they have in their warehouse to the water system that they're using inside the building, irrigation. They're going to look at air compressors to see if there's areas to improve there. They're going to look at employee behavior. They'll look at what they're recycling, what they're throwing away. They'll produce a report. Again, no cost to the company. That report is reviewed by city staff in economic development and community development, as well as the owners of the company. And it will outline various initiatives that company can perform to reduce the cost of doing business, reduce what they're using in energy, reduce what they're using in water, and obviously there's a cost to do that. If you're going to install new lighting, there's going to be costs to that. If you're going to do something as bold as putting solar panels on, obviously there's a cost to doing that. Certainly we're coming out of the Great Recession, and businesses don't have a lot of money on hand to do that. Even though the actions that they could employ would save them money, they don't necessarily have the capital on hand to do that. So what this program calls for is $500,000 for the city to grant or loan a company the sufficient capital in order to make those recommended actions. And so what we've conceived of is a program that will grant $10,000 to reimburse a company for costs. That money does not need to be paid back. That's $10,000. They perform the task, the City of Benicia cuts them a check, and there's no out-of-pocket for expenses from the company. If they're going to have a project or program that's going to be a little more ambitious, we have a zero-interest loan up to $25,000. And if it's going to be more ambitious, then they have a low-interest loan up to $50,000. Now, to date, we have 4 companies within our park that have, we've initiated this process. And I can say we really began in earnest in November. So the first company was All Points Petroleum. They are a fleet business, and they ship fuel. And so they were a pilot project. Initially, we kind of used them to help model the program. And so they're in the process now of improving all their lighting, exterior lighting, where they house their vehicles, as well as the equipment inside their trailer. Pretty modest. They'll probably be around $10,000 or $12,000 worth of work. The other company that was a pilot program was Dunlop Manufacturing. They're one of the largest employers in Benicia, employing over 200 people in our industrial park. They are responsible for manufacturing guitar picks and other music-related items. They have 9 buildings within the industrial park. And we had the company called Carbon Lighthouse went out and did a full assessment. They found over $500,000 worth of improvements that could be done for Dunlop Manufacturing. We've pared that down. It's about a $55,000 project. And one of the nice success stories of this program is Carbon Lighthouse was able to design a $55,000 program for which the City of Benicia was going to loan $50,000 for them to perform this work. A day after we entered into that contract with Dunlop Manufacturing, Carbon Lighthouse was able to secure a $50,000 funding from PG&E. So that's money that City of Benicia now doesn't have to spend on Dunlop. We obviously facilitated that assessment, but now we can use that $50,000 for another company. We just reviewed today Signal Solutions. They're out in our industrial park, primarily a warehousing company. And it looks like we're going to move forward with a solar project on that building, probably about a $36,000 project. And so we're really excited in the City of Benicia that we're able to get capital out into the industrial park. We're reducing carbon and greenhouse gases that are being released out in our industrial park. And for Benicia, we've done a pretty good job as a city in being stewards and investing in solar projects and investing in lighting. This building itself that you're in, this community center, will be LEED certified, and while this is being recorded, maybe gold certified. So that's something that's coming down the pike. So the City of Benicia has done a good job, but we recognize that where we're really need to focus our attention is out in our industrial park. That's where the opportunity to address kind of environmental stewardship really lies. And this is what that program is designed to do. And we're hopeful that we can leverage the whole total project cost to $625,000. $100,000 is to pay for those assessments, and the $525,000 is to provide the capital necessary for businesses to act on those recommendations. And our hope is, just like Carbon Lighthouse was able to secure $50,000 from PG&E, that we can leverage these dollars to continue this program out. And hopefully this can be a program that sustains itself. The loan is a revolving loan fund. So the money that we loan Signal Solutions will come back to us in a few years, and we can loan that money out again to another company. And so it's certainly my hope as the staff person tasked with implementing this program, as this is one of those things that can be in my economic development toolkit when I go out and interact with the community. One final note that I will share. This program is relatively innovative in the sense that it's really geared to business. This is a similar model that you've seen in residential, but not so much in business. And so too, it was recognized by the International Economic Development Council, and you'll notice that recognition on the brochure. And that was an award that was given to the City of Benicia at their annual conference in Houston. And so it's something that we're really proud of, and it's able to promote this program. So I'm kind of starting your lesson today as an example of an incentive program, and a program that was conceived just last year. And it was conceived by citizen volunteers. that said there's got to be something that we can do, and they were able to get the process in motion and get the local government behind it, and now we have money in a program that is going to have environmental and economic benefit to our businesses. So happy to share that with you, happy to answer any questions if you have them.
You're awfully lucky to live in Benicia where you have resources of all types available to you. Seriously. The program that we just heard about is not a program that I would be hearing about in many cities, and we work around the Bay Area in many cities. So I want to give you a, ooh, are you lucky kind of pat on the back, because it's partially you that made that happen, the citizens of Benicia, and it's pretty exciting. So back to not money necessarily in your hand from another source, but let's talk about ways that we can take advantage of tonight's topic. Just so you remember, last time we did business case for sustainability, and Thursday was a long time ago, but we did a level set because a lot of the people in the room didn't come into the room with necessarily definitions of sustainability. So we did some level setting last time. And there will be a very short quiz, I promise, to ask you so you can give us some feedback on whether you remember anything. If you forgot everything, take heart, you get to hear it again. Only we're going to put a different spin on it. Tonight we're going to talk about lean, green, and clean operations. This is our second in a series of 4. And then after that will come green and social marketing, and then of course your action plans. And the reason I'm pausing on your action plans is next time we'll talk about them in a little bit more detail. An action plan can be very individual. It doesn't have to be scary, but we will give you a template if you'd like one, because some people like to have a little bit of structure. And it doesn't matter if it's just a brainstorm dream that you have, or if it's something that's already in progress. So we're going to give you some examples of that. So tonight what we're going to cover is, we are going to do a little bit from last time. We're going to talk about the power of design tonight and the power of people, because there's all kinds of assets, right? 3 kinds of assets. Physical assets, environment. People assets, absolutely, and don't forget the money assets. And power of people is what we'll end with. And I'd like to start by talking about the 3 R's. And for your information, these are in the listed by the level of importance, what you should pay attention to first. Before I jump there, last session I had a very intensive picture, as in dense, huge file of pictures. I couldn't send that easily out to y'all. And so what I probably will do is I'll pull the text out of that PowerPoint presentation, and we'll add it to some of the text of this PowerPoint presentation. I'll marry them together. So you still have the information from the presentations, but we're going to shed a lot of those pictures because they were just for input, but you don't want all those pictures eating up all of your space. So 3 R's. 3 R's plus 1, redesign. So people all say, I reduce, I recycle, I reuse, but actually if you reduce first, you have to bother to recycle. So if you do it in this order, first you reduce your use so you don't bother to create something that has to be recycled or is wasted. That's the order: reduce, reuse, recycle, and redesign. And redesign is going to be one of the main focuses tonight. But before we jump to that focus, we're going to have a small quiz. Who remembers what, in your own words, is a sustainable business? Can anybody give me an idea in your own words, what is a sustainable business? No fair looking at your notes. Absolutely, one that is sustainable economically, one that does not go bankrupt. That's for sure a sustainable business. What else?
It also has to look at the environment and has to look at people.
Has to look at the environment and has to look at people. That's right. This is one of the short definitions that we gave you last time. It incorporates principles of sustainability into each of its business decisions. So every single business decision that you make, you think about those 3 things. We talked about some benefits of sustainability last time. All right. Are there any? Julia, we just heard Mario up here talking about some of the benefits. Who can give me some benefits for being a sustainable business?
You can stay in business.
Stay in business, economically viable, absolutely. Who's got another one? There were 7, actually there were 6. There should have been 7. We'll give you the 7th one tonight. What's another one?
Cost savings.
Cost savings. So it helps your operating costs. Absolutely.
Improve your profile in the community.
Improves your reputation and profile and brand, right? Absolutely. Good one.
It lessens or improves the impacts on the environment.
it lessens or improves the impacts on the environment. That's right. So you do have the opportunity to either improve the environment or degrade it less, or make it resilient. Any more? Yes.
Improves the employee morale.
Absolutely. A big key for businesses is employee morale and retention, because employee retention is a very costly thing if you're trying to re-employ people. It's a huge bottom line impact. I think we got at least 6 there, right? So let's see how we did. Brand value and reputation, got it. Employee and future workforce, got it. Operational effectiveness, got it. Risk management, we didn't talk about that per se, but actually if you aren't economically viable, you have risks. If you don't care of the environment, as you talked about, we have risks. So by default, we talked about it. Organizational growth, that has to do with the ability to have employees and grow your business. Or what if you have a new subsidiary or a spinoff that is going through a different path from your current economic path? And so it gives you the opportunity to grow maybe with a new product or a new product line. Business opportunities, those are kind of the same. Nancy, do you have a different way to say business opportunities?
So I think business opportunities is having more lines or different branding, and organizational growth is more strength as an organization or acquisition of other lines.
Right, right.
There's 2 sides of the same coin.
Right. And the one that we forgot last time, we didn't forget it by the way, just fell off. This is a pretty important one that you said about 3 different ways, which is your direct financial impact. So you passed the quiz, got all 7 there. I think last time, it might have been you that talked about the fact that there's some organizations who are uncomfortable with some of the sustainability words. They don't want to hear the word green, they certainly don't want to hear tree hugger, they're not very interested in CO2. And so there are a number of ways you can define sustainability to meet your audience. And you don't have to use words that are possibly roadblocks or barriers to the story in their head. And we talked about the story, changing the story the very first session. So we talked about the 3 Ps last time. Yes, ma'am. But where we could put, what I heard you say is, I'll repeat it for the room, is that there are situations as an organization, a business or another organization, where you need to either take advantage or be ready for new technologies that may come along and impact your ability to respond to your market or to make available what you have so other people see it. Is that the right question? Okay. And if that's the question, then let's see here. Technology changes constantly, right? And in a world where technology changes, it's very important to think about risk. Because if you are not ready to embrace technology when it comes to your public sector or private sector, you're at risk. So that means you have to be aware of what's out there, and you have to know who your stakeholders are who need to be involved in the decisions of what you would be buying. I'm assuming that you have the financial ability to procure new technology, or you at least can figure out the business case of whether it makes sense. Because that doesn't matter whether it's a sustainable business or not. You always have to figure out the finances of technology. So I think risk management is one place where it fits. It absolutely fits in operational effectiveness, because new technologies often make you more effective, which is how they pay for themselves. That's how they're self-funding. So it probably fits at least in those 2 areas. How about employees? Employees often like to have on their resumes the latest technologies that are out there so that they can be a good candidate to develop their careers. So it fits there too. Any place else that you can think of where it would fit? And let's take one more leap, because I agree definitely with the financial impact there. I want to go back to risk. What happens if there's a new technology that absolutely leapfrogs the technology that you are doing? Now you have a negative financial risk. So it fits in there too. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did.
Great. All right, some words. I'm not going to go over this whole chart. This chart will be in your list. But there are words here that are the right languaging or terminology that will really resonate well with some types of business people. So for sure, 3 Ps, people, planet, profit. In this case, it's people, planet, prosperity. I'll buy that. Economic, 3 Es. Economic, environment, and equity. 3 different ways of saying the exact same thing. If you're talking on the economic side, for sure you have to talk about ROI, earnings before taxes. There's some basic things that you must talk about no matter who you're talking to in the financial realm. New markets is always a word that will catch their attention, just like market value and market share. On the environmental side, eco-efficiency isn't CO2. Eco-efficiency is about not wasting money. If you are wasting water and energy, you are wasting money. So eco-efficiency is a great example of talking about the environmental impact of technologies, et cetera, up there. And so you can understand green technology and also renewable resources could easily fit under the environment, right? And then let's talk about this equity people piece. Stakeholder engagement and accountability. Or how about your image? Or how about what happens when your shareholders are mad at you because you're not taking care of your workers on the supply chain in China? All those are examples of people and equity, and they'll definitely resonate with any kind of business if you use those kind of words. So I think last time you made a point that we had dwelled, which we did, on some sustainability lingo. Same purpose, different words. Change the story to match them. And this is another quick slide that I won't go over in great detail, but if you're thinking about what makes you perform in a superior fashion, what do businesses want to do? They need to perform, they need to be excellent. So in order to perform and be excellent, if you think about what impacts do I have, what costs do I have, what risks do I have, what are my opportunities, you'll find these words, supply chain risk, which is a big one, supply chain risk, which is a big one, reducing your environmental footprint, why is that important? It's money. Avoid non-compliance, why is that important? Risk, government regulations. How about entering new markets? Any of this lingo or language will work well for those of you who are trying to frame your story when you're having dinner or talking to somebody at a party and trying to explain why you think sustainability is important. So these are there just for your convenience. We always try and give you a tool each session. And last session we talked about 30-second message. And I must congratulate you, everybody gave it a shot. Did anybody go think about the 30-second message in the 7 days that passed? What we're hoping is that you will think about what's in a 30-second message. Our intention is to make sure you leave this program with a 30-second message. And so we're going to call on you next time. For those of you who haven't got one in your mind, start crafting it so we can help you. You've got the perfect petri dish here. This is nothing but a support group, and thanks to you, we got to learn something, so thank you very much. Okie doke. Oh my God, who did this horrible thing? So, we will not make you do this. You do not have to do this, but it's important for you to realize that we are from a business school. Dominican University is a business school. We teach in our business school people who are only focused on sustainability because business will make a difference in the world. And the kinds of things they do is this old-fashioned thing called a value stream map. And a value stream map is where in the old days when you were manufacturing something, the faster you moved it down the line, the better it was. No waste, no time waste. So this is an example of a time, where is it? A time value stream map. And you have suppliers, and it goes to the truck, it goes to receiving, and goes to milling and welding and painting, and they assemble it. And each part here has a time, 5 days, 2 minutes, 10 days, 4 minutes. And they actually map by time how long it takes for their product to get out the door to the customer. That's a time value stream map. What about this kind of value stream map? Now we're talking about things that are more relevant to sustainability in the future. Byproducts. Please note this word. Costly byproducts. Byproducts are waste. So if you're looking at the supplier example here, the same stuff, except what do they also capture? They're capturing how many pounds of hazardous waste did this process create? How many pounds of hazardous waste did welding create and painting and so forth? They cost it out, they figure out what the cost is to get rid of it, what the cost is to create it, etc. What about measuring the value of water? Well, if you're a Coca-Cola and you don't have access to water, how expensive do you think that is? So don't think water is free. Water is not free. If you want to know how expensive it is, imagine your life or your business without it. So companies that are water intensive have to think about this. This is nothing more than an example of capturing how much water they use per day, 50 gallons, 45 gallons, not per day, per process, molding, subassembly, filling, sterilization, packaging. How much water does each piece use? But they compare that to how much water do they actually need. If you ever want a value stream map, I bet you buttons we could find an MBA student who will do this for you. This is not a room of people who are into manufacturing. But people who are into manufacturing, if you know somebody in your life who's thinking about manufacturing, these are the kinds of things they have to think about. What's missing? What's missing in this picture? It starts over here with source, it goes through the process, and then it gets to the customer. What's missing? Disposal. They're absolutely missing some things that are part of a product life cycle. And if you think the way our manufacturing industry has evolved, they are really good at, and have been historically good at, creating a product, you hand it to the customer, poof, we're done. In fact, they're quite good at creating a product, give it to the customer, make sure it breaks pretty soon, poof, we're done. So that is a model of manufacturing that has some ramifications, right? Let's talk about this. Planned obsolescence. This is a new kind of analysis. It's a framework. It's a formalized framework on how organizations and businesses think about the life cycle of a product. And let's talk about this eye chart here. These are the phases of a product. Here's raw material extraction, got a tractor there. Here's the production phase. You have to transport it. And by the way, transportation fits into many phases of this. I just have it sitting here. There's the product use phase of it and the disposal of it. So if you're thinking about what the raw material or extraction, oops, so watch this. It said life cycle of a bottle. What comes before recycle in our 4 R's?
Reduce.
Reduce. So actually, there's a whole step in this particular life cycle analysis that could have, we could have jumped all the way back to having a reusable, don't need to have bottles because we have our own bottles, right? So there's a step that could have been right there. You pass the quiz again. I'm going to do some quick pictures because I really think pictures help you get a mental mindset of the pieces and parts of life cycle analysis. So this is a input. It's an extraction. This is for the lumber industry. This is the agricultural industry. This might be cement or some kind of maybe oil, don't know. The mining industry. In this case, it's just sand. They use for all kinds of things. And this is an input, and this is an extraction. This is actually an input into a process. Maybe they're making carrot soup. Another step there, you have to get your products, your extraction goods to the place where they produce them. Ships are the lowest transportation CO2, not planes. This is the cheapest CO2 methodology because you have volumes, not that particular ship. It's like an oil ship. But if it was a cargo carrying ship, it is the lowest CO2 footprint for transport. This happens to be cheese, I think. Production is just a process. Production is a process. It's a manufacturing plant. And I've been to China. Production's a process there. There's no way to compare the processes between what we do in the United States and in China, except that they have inputs and outputs. But the things that govern their processes are very different there. And you end up with a product. In this case, this is a washing machine or a teddy bear. And what happens to your product when you're done, your life cycle, it's disposed of. This happens to be trash. So what happens all through every single step of this process, life cycle phases, is everything for every phase comes as energy or resources from the earth. Got to come from somewhere. Every single phase here comes from the earth, and every single phase here has an emission or a waste. So a life cycle assessment, which is very formal, you can have one done informally, they have organizations that do it, will come out and help you understand what your waste is. They'll do those value stream maps, and they'll do these kinds of maps to understand your inputs for each phase and your outputs. What's missing?
Can I ask you a question?
Okay, so we've spent the first part of this workshop this evening talking about life cycle analysis and examining some of the issues that arise when you really look at what goes into making a product or service and transporting it, et cetera. And the good news is somebody's blocking half the slide. Thank you, just in case. But the good news is that there are changes coming down the pike. There are people who are addressing these issues, and that's basically why we're all here today. So we're just going to talk about some of the exciting changes and sort of operational changes that are happening around the world and around California, and probably in Benicia too. So to address some of these issues. You want the one? Okay. Wow, so dark.
Oh, there you go.
Don't go to sleep on me now. I'm gonna poke people every now and then, because extended producer responsibility is very exciting. Okay, so one of the issues that we've discovered that we had to address is that what happens to a product after it reaches its consumer point. You know, what happens to it when the consumer is done with it? And one of the responses that was first developed in Europe is that the producer's responsibility does not end once the product is sold. It continues through the end of the product itself. Okay, so it is called extended producer responsibility. So the producer's responsibility extends beyond purchase to figuring out how to relatively responsibly dispose of a product once it has reached the end of its useful life. So it's an environmental policy approach in which a producer's responsibility for extended responsibility. That's the OECD that said that. The first extended producer responsibility laws came into effect, probably, I believe, in Scandinavia. I believe it was in Sweden. The country that's done a lot of work on this is Germany. However, and there is a lot of operational expense and design that goes into figuring out how to get the producer into a position where he can take back these materials in a way that's safe and efficient, and various other challenges. But it also exists in California. Right now on the books, there are 6 extended producer responsibility rules in California that have to do with taking back paint at the end of its life cycle. As you probably know, there are ways of disposing of paint for which the producer of them is responsible. Pesticide containers, which, as you can imagine, is a pretty important topic. Auto refrigerants, that's via AB 32, has some requirements about the chemicals that go into making your car air conditioners, which can be very toxic. Carpet, mercury thermostats, and product recalls. So the producer is responsible for taking back products that are faulty in some way, that are found to be faulty or dangerous. So the point of this is that these kinds of rules are coming into effect overseas and here, so that as a responsible and sustainable business person, you're going to want to prepare for this and maybe not wait for it to be a law, maybe design your product or service in such a way that it can take the end of life of the product into account. A sort of even larger framework that is, how many people have heard of cradle to cradle? Cradle to cradle? Yes. Okay. Can somebody explain it or say what they know about it? Thinking the concept of waste so that everything becomes, everything that is waste for one process becomes the spur or the nourishment for another. Those violations are being addressed, and but there are certainly a lot of unscrupulous recyclers that do take advantage of that and ship our waste overseas, where it is poisoning land and people. So there are, however, hopefully, if something is cradle-to-cradle certified, which is actually another framework for certification that we have, that is addressed. So, but that is not to say that there are not violations of this and that there are not problems with it. However, at least we're moving in that direction. At least we understand that it is a problem, which is the first step towards understanding. But absolutely, do violations occur? Oh, heck yes. Every little bit makes a difference, yeah, but it is hard.
Okay, so we're going to move in. So that's one of the ways that, so extended producer responsibility is one of the ways that that manufacturers are addressing fixing products that have already been designed. We're going to look now at sustainable designing from the beginning of an issue, of a product. So, and one of the major sources of solid waste, I believe it's something like 40% of US solid waste comes from product packaging. So packaging is something that is extremely difficult to address, but there are places where it's being done. And also zero waste, which is the sort of gold standard for diverting 100% of your of waste from landfills, so everything gets recycled or composted or in other ways reused, is a goal for a lot of places, and a lot of countries have advanced to a really farther degree than we have gotten to, including, for instance, Sweden, which has attained a 96% solid waste diversion rate, which is kind of a problem because they run a lot of their energy plants on waste. They've been using this waste-to-energy power plants. They now have to, it's gotten to such a point they don't have enough solid waste left, so they're importing it from Norway next door. They're importing Norway's garbage to create energy and then actually shipping back whatever is remaining back to Norway. So there are incredible advances that are possible that other places are addressing and that we can also be addressing in our time. There's actually a zero waste conference coming up in, do you know when it is? I think it's March? In San Francisco. Yeah, there are some very interesting speakers, and it's both a global and local level speakers are coming, and it's a whole week of events around that. So it's very, very exciting field. Earlier today, has redesigned possibilities. So let's take a look at this video. So has anybody heard about this? This is a new product by Levi's that they actually just came out, I think it was last week or the week before, where they are claiming to use 8 plastic bottles in every pair of jeans. They're coming out with a new line, a line extension, we call it in marketing. So they're coming out with a new product that has supposedly 8 plastic bottles worth woven into these pairs of jeans. So that's one way of not just addressing, well, is it organic cotton or is it other cotton, but actually how can we incorporate waste into something that can be reused. Yes, that's great. Your reaction is quite true. That and I actually don't know the answer. Is it bad to be wearing a propylene in your jeans? I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the yep. So the lesson here to draw is there are no easy answers, but they keep sort of pushing at the envelope to see how they can move forward. And here is another, we won't watch this entire video, but here is another example of a product redesign.
Mushrooms. I love them. Stuffed mushrooms, sauteed mushrooms.
This guy's a little obnoxious, but
Mushroom soup, mushroom stew, mushroom styrofoam packing material.
Could go on and on with that, but it just gives you an idea of all of the considerations that go into recreating a product that you would use. So they talked about waste, they talked about energy, they talked about what is the concept of imitating nature in biomimicry, right? Biomimicry. So they're using some of these natural processes to redesign products. Now, are there drawbacks to this particular? The other thing I wanted to point out is that they said you can use the material that is closest to you. So this is often a real answer to sustainability, is that something that works in one area needs to be adjusted to work in another. So again, this silver bullet concept needs to be we need to work with that a little bit more, so that you need to adjust to the needs of a particular environment. And so this segues into our next sort of section, which is some of the exciting things that are coming from all kinds of people. As you know, those of us, you know, with a couple gray hairs might remember a time when a local business did not have access to global markets because, you know, you had your store on Benicia's main street and you couldn't reach people other places. And so there have been so many extraordinary developments around the internet that have allowed small businesses and individuals to really expand their reach and impact. And so it's a sort of a phenomenon that we're grouping a bunch of things under called Here Comes Everybody, which is a book by Clay Shirky. So there are a couple of concepts that we're just going to go over now briefly. One is the Maker's Revolution, and one of our one of our participants here is going to address that, though we have a video. Crowdsourcing and crowdfunding, so using the power of crowds to create social and environmental impact. Collaborative consumption, which is a fancy way of saying basically sharing more. And collaborative workspaces that's going to be addressed. So first, how is technology enabling creativity?
There are schools, yeah, there are schools, but a district, boy, I would doubt that a green business program would take it on because it would be a lifetime of trying to certify the entire district. Yeah, exactly. I guess I think it's San Francisco or whatever, but yeah, it could take for a long time.
Internships for college kids or something.
It's hard. It's hard. We've tried it. We actually we brought in green MBAs to intern with them, but it's really hard going into a small business unless it's an office space or retail, something that really is not very regulated. They can help a lot. Students can help a lot. But when you get into a regulated industry, like we tried it with restaurants, there are so many rules and regulations that a restaurant has to jump through, all of these hoops, that trying to bring students in to get them to understand that, you know, they'd have great ideas about sustainability, but it doesn't fly in a restaurant where you have to keep something at a certain degree and this, you know, cooling thing has to be this and heating thing has to be that and whatever. So it's sometimes yes, sometimes no. And that is maybe not two systemic thinking tools to this evening. Yes?
So I saw you had a list of a checklist for
Yeah.
various companies. Now, has that been expanded? Like you have industrial sites, tech refineries,
Okay, so
companies, so
refineries are unlikely. Another reason why the California Chemical Association did not want the legislation the first time around was because we had put into the language of the legislation was that essentially some businesses were not going to be certified. And that was things like refineries, hazardous chemical manufacturers, things like that. I mean, how can you call them a green business when they're creating something that is hazardous or toxic or emitting and so on? Refineries are also they're not considered small or medium businesses normally. So
Which was really a big part of the issue there.
yeah, and it's like there are garment cleaners, but they have to be either wet cleaners or CO2 users. They cannot be using any petroleum-based products at all. Otherwise, they just can't be considered green. So there's a lot of debate that goes into all of these checklists. A lot of effort and thought into what can be green and what can't be green. They've been trying to do it with nail polish and nail salons for years because nail salons would really they're insanely toxic spaces. How do you create a nail salon that's green and still have them painting nails? It's almost impossible. So they haven't been able to figure out how to do a green checklist for a nail salon. And some businesses you just can't. So what I have here is janitorial, office retail, garment cleaning, restaurant, office retail, dental. And these are the San Francisco checklists. But the checklists are kind of the same throughout California. They will lean towards the concerns within each given county. So I know like in Santa Cruz, water runoff is a huge concern. It may not be the same, say, well, in San Francisco, it's not as big of a concern as it is in Santa Cruz County. So each county can put its flavor of concern on the checklists. And so each one is a little bit different, but they tend to be fairly much the same. So if anybody wants to look at these, yeah?
Why is it worse than Santa Cruz County?
It's just that's their biggest concern. They have a lot of runoff issues and a lot of runoff problems. and yeah, it's probably some pesticides. Yeah, yeah. Well, that could be too, unless it's organic marijuana. Yeah. Sure, but it's, you know, it's like every county has its concerns, and you know, San Francisco is actually much stricter than most of the other counties because they actually have a lot more environmental regulations within the county and city. So of how they do this now, especially now that it's at the state level, and San Francisco has now put them up on their website. So
we
you
can
don't
make these available to you then?
Yeah, or you can just go to San Francisco Green Business, and all of these are there. So I know you had one more question, or?
Well, I was just going to ask, so is there a known process for developing these checklists?
Yeah, they actually, you have all of the green business coordinators from each of the different counties will provide input if it's something that their county is concerned with. Sometimes it's not, like wineries, okay? Not every county is going to be concerned with wineries. So those counties that say want to certify them will step up. The regulators will come to the table, they'll work with them. The businesses will come to the table and work with them, and they will get businesses to vet them as well. So they'll beta test on business to see what works and what doesn't. They also do, they go back to them about, I think almost every 2 years, they'll go back to them to add innovations that have happened so that businesses can introduce more and interesting ideas into their sustainability. And they will also take away some things because new regulations came on board, and what they used to be able to do to get certified, they can't do anymore because they have to do it by law. So there's it's a lot of work. It takes at least a year to get a checklist done.
Utilizing a lot of county staff time?
No, not really. I mean, it's the regulators have to be there. The regulators have to vet the checklist, but the coordinators will do kind of the first round. Then it goes to the regulatory community so that they can take a look at it and see what they think, test the language, whatever. And then they'll bring business in and get feedback, so it's sort of a phased process. I mean, there is some time, but there's a lot to be said for having regulators actually think about pollution prevention as opposed to charging a fine. And when a business does fall out of compliance, they can come to them and say, here's the Green Business Program. Next time around, let's all do better, which is something regulators never used to do. So that's the advantage of it.